Okay, let's get into this. We're doing a deep dive today. Based on source material, you shared some really interesting excerpts from a book called A Free Man by someone named Maestro.
Hmm.
And it really paints this picture, a journey starting from a life that, well, looks pretty good from the outside.
Right. Like you've got the good job, maybe in a busy city, the full closet, calendar totally packed, seems complete.
Exactly. Looks like everything's sorted.
But,
Yeah.
and this is the key thing the source brings up straight away, inside. It felt like a cage.
Yeah, and not like actual bars.
No, more subtle.
Yeah.
The bars were things like expectations, fears, maybe those little white lies you tell yourself.
Or others.
Yeah, or others. And all that stuff you're told growing up.
Oh, yeah. The be successful, play it safe kind of thing.
That's it. Don't rock the boat. Don't disappoint people. All that weight.
So the source describes this moment, I think it was on a balcony at night, alone.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't like a sudden explosion, more like a shift. It started with just asking a question.
A pretty powerful one, though. If nothing and no one could stop me, how would I actually live?
And the source makes a point that it wasn't some big movie escape scene.
No, much quieter. Like you said, a shift. The source uses this image of ice breaking under pressure.
Okay.
Suddenly seeing the patterns. Why you took certain jobs, maybe because someone else thought they were right.
Or staying in relationships maybe out of fear of being alone.
Exactly. Rather than real, honest connection.
So connecting that to the bigger picture in the source, this questioning, that's the spark.
That's the essential start. It's not freedom itself, not yet, but it's the beginning of something real, the end of just coasting.
The source calls it the awakening, right?
Yeah, the awakening.
Right.
And it stresses it's not usually like a lightning bolt, more like fog lifting bit by bit.
So you start to see things, well, as they are.
Pretty much, cutting through all the layers of how you were told they should look or feel.
Okay, so after that spark, that awakening, it moves into what the source calls a life examined.
Right. And we all hear that phrase, the unexamined life.
This is not worth living. Yeah.
But the source really emphasizes that thinking about examining your life is completely different from actually doing it.
It's not just a casual, what makes me happy?
No, it's digging way deeper, asking much harder questions, the kind that require uncomfortable honesty.
What kind of questions?
Things like, why do I grab my phone the second I wake up? Why does my self-worth feel so tied to, my achievements?
Or why do I stay quiet when my gut is screaming at me to say something?
Exactly, those kinds of things. And that leads to this recurring question in the source. What are you really running from?
What's the fear underneath it all?
Mm-hmm. The book talks about peeling back layers of armor. The politeness, the performing, the pretending.
Just trying to fit in.
Yeah. Confronting that constant need for validation from outside. And the source contrasts this with moments of actual, real joy.
Which apparently didn't come from getting likes or praise.
No. Came from just being present. From living in truth. Simple moments, nothing fancy.
Okay, so this deep dive into yourself, realizing how much was about pleasing others, that leads to the next step.
It has to, really. It leads to needing the courage to say no.
Ah, yeah. The source talks about how saying yes for years felt like the right thing. Responsible, polite.
The path of least resistance, often.
But saying no, that felt, well, the source says, quietly devastating at first.
Because you risk upsetting people.
Right.
Rocking the boat again. Disrupting comfort zones, yours and theirs.
But the insight here, according to the source, is that saying no isn't really about being aggressive.
Not at all. It's partly boundary setting, sure. But deeper than that, it's about alignment.
Alignment with what?
With that truth you're starting to uncover about yourself. It's less about confrontation, more about reclaiming your own space, your own energy.
So every no to something that isn't truly you, it's like cutting away something that's holding you back.
Exactly. Like pruning a plant so it can grow properly. The Force frames it as self-respect, not selfishness.
Mm-hmm.
A tool for carving out a life based on what's real for you.
That carving idea connects to the next point, the weight of stuff.
Yeah, and it starts simply enough, like clearing out a box of old clothes or something.
Well, I'm there.
Right. But it quickly becomes clear this goes way beyond just physical things. It's about shedding excess weight everywhere.
Even if you didn't think of yourself as materialistic.
Especially then, maybe. The source mentions realizing how possessions were used almost like armor or distractions.
Filling a void. Or avoiding looking at it.
Precisely. And the really fascinating link the source makes is between clearing out the physical stuff and gaining mental clarity.
So less clutter outside equals less clutter inside.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
The more external stuff went, the clearer the author saw how it had been clouding priorities judgment.
And the definition of success starts to shift then, too.
Definitely. Less about the external results, more about the quality of the process, the depth of connection.
Letting go wasn't easy, though, the source says, even things you loved.
No, there was emotion, sometimes grief. But that grief apparently made space for gratitude, for growth.
So the insight isn't about becoming a minimalist monk, necessarily.
Not unless that's authentically you. It's about carrying only what truly matters to you. Less weight, more freedom.
And getting rid of that weight, physical and, metaphorical, it prepares you for the next bit, the price of truth.
Yeah, the source is really direct about this. Truth is powerful, maybe beautiful, but it's not soft.
What gives things away? Illusions.
That's the idea. And it comes with a cost. Often starts small, too.
Like how?
Like just answering honestly when someone asks, how are you? Instead of the automatic, fine you.
The source actually paused and said, I'm not okay.
Yep. And the silence that followed apparently felt heavy.
Yeah.
Heavier than expected.
That silence is telling, isn't it?
Very. The source describes realizing just how much of life had been a performance, playing roles.
The good son, the reliable employee, the easygoing friend.
All of it. So speaking truth, first to yourself, then maybe to others. It means things start to change, some things fall away.
Relationships might drift or change shape.
For sure. Conversations shift from just pleasantries to something, well, realer, which can be painful sometimes.
The source mentions a different kind of loneliness even.
Yeah, like being in a crowd but longing for genuine connection, which only really happened when daring to speak that messy truth.
So the takeaway is, truth isn't always comfortable.
Far from it. But the source frames it as profoundly liberating, maybe the bravest thing you can do.
And that bravery, that truth-telling, seems really linked to finding strength in being alone, doesn't it? The source calls it solitude over silence.
Exactly. Before, being alone might have felt like something to fear, easily confused with loneliness.
But choosing solitude, intentionally, without distractions.
That became a gift, according to the source. It allowed the mind to quiet down, the inner pace to slow, made space for the soul to breathe, as the book puts it.
So solitude is where you can actually hear the answers to those tough questions you started asking earlier.
That's the idea. Without the pressure to perform or impress anyone, it's where you might rediscover parts of yourself you lost.
Or acknowledge feelings you'd pushed away. Joy, maybe. Vulnerability.
It became a space for reflection, writing, just observing, connecting with what you actually love.
And it helps you see your relationships more clearly, too. Which ones are built on obligation versus real connection.
Yeah, leading to being more selective, maybe. The key point seems to be that real connection with others starts with knowing yourself.
And solitude helps you build that firm foundation within yourself.
Right, so you rely less on external validation. You become more rooted.
Okay, so if you put all these pieces together, the questioning, saying no, shedding stuff, truth, solitude, it builds towards what the source calls the rebellion within.
Yeah, and I love this idea. The book argues that freedom isn't always this loud, dramatic thing. No big gestures, no flags waving.
No visible chains breaking.
Right. Sometimes, maybe the most powerful kind of freedom is just quiet, internal, just deciding in your own mind, your own heart, to stop living the way you were told you should.
It's an internal shift, not necessarily an external escape.
Exactly. It's not about rejecting the whole world. It's about making different choices from the inside.
Like starting the chase for things just because they seem prestigious or hard to get?
Yeah, like promotions or external awards or whatever. It's about choosing authenticity instead, tuning into that quiet inner voice that says, this is me, and that's enough.
The source says the most radical act is just becoming yourself.
In a world that's constantly trying to make you somebody else, yeah, that's the rebellion.
And this internal shift, it naturally impacts relationships too. The source talks about love without possession.
Which is a big one. The old way of thinking about love was often about holding on tight, right? Claiming, protecting, possessing. But the source describes learning that real love, maybe, isn't about ownership at all. It's about freedom.
Both your own freedom and the other person's.
Both. And that wasn't an easy lesson, apparently. Came through heartbreak, tough conversations.
What's the core idea there? How does the source put it?
It's articulated beautifully, I think. Something like, I see you as you are, not as I want you to be.
Wow.
And you are free, and I choose you anyway. It's a love that doesn't try to control or manipulate.
It's more like Standing with open hands, offering presents.
Exactly. Presence and acceptance, not pressure or expectations. Learning to recognize the energy in relationships. Stop trying to fix people.
Just appreciating them, maybe for however long they're there.
Yeah. It's described as a love that uplifts, doesn't bind. A free person, the source suggests, doesn't need to possess love to feel it. They let it move through them.
And kind of weaving through all of this is the quiet power of integrity.
And integrity here isn't just, following the rules or looking good on the outside.
It's deeper.
Much deeper. It's that alignment between your values, your actions, and your words, especially when nobody's watching.
And the tough part isn't the big ethical crises necessarily.
No, it's often the small daily choices, the ones that test that alignment day in, day out.
Integrity isn't about being perfect, though, right?
Definitely not. It's about owning your mistakes, even when it costs you your pride or it's inconvenient. It's about speaking your truth, even when it's complicated.
The source mentions losing things by living with more integrity.
Yeah, things like comfortable silences, easy ways out, maybe even some relationships that weren't built on real honesty.
But what's gained?
A sense of peace, apparently. Presence. The book argues integrity is this quiet, internal strength that ultimately wins out. It's a kind of freedom nothing external can touch.
Okay, and with all these internal changes happening, it forces you to look at success differently, redefining success.
Absolutely. For years, the source had that standard picture. The job title, the salary, the recognition.
Looking good on paper.
Exactly. Applause and metrics. But after doing that deep examination, asking those hard questions.
Like, what actually makes me feel alive? What do I want more of just for me, not to impress anyone?
Right. A totally different definition started to emerge from inside.
So success became less about the title.
And more about doing things with peace, with integrity, waking up without that sense of dread.
Going to sleep without regret.
Yeah. Measured more by the quality of connections, not the number of contacts, more about creativity, presence, just living authentically.
Letting go of that old definition wasn't easy, though, the source admits.
No, there was grief with that, too. And some people just didn't get it. They saw it as like walking away from opportunity.
But the source frames it as walking towards something else.
Something quieter, maybe deeper, truer. The insight is that real success, in this view, is about feeling truly at home in your own skin.
Not just being ahead in some race someone else designed.
Precisely.
So if we pull all these threads together, this whole journey the source describes, it leads to what the book calls a life of his own.
Yeah. And the key idea isn't that freedom is some destination you finally arrive at.
It's not a finish line.
No, it's presented as a practice. A continuous way of showing up for yourself day after day with honesty, courage, maybe a little grace.
The big realization being you don't always have to blow up your current life to be free.
Right, you just have to stop abandoning yourself within it.
So a free man, according to this source, isn't defined by having no external constraints.
Not necessarily. It's about living a life that's shaped from the inside out, defined internally, not by someone else's checklist or timeline.
The source mentions losing things along the way, approval, maybe predictable paths.
Yeah, but gaining clarity, depth, a sense of wholeness, a different kind of connection, a different kind of love.
It really boils down to knowing what matters to you, doesn't it?
And making choices that align with your voice. The whole journey is framed as this internal shift towards living a life that genuinely fits you.
And you don't need anyone's permission for that.
You really don't. Just permission from yourself to be who you are.
Okay, let's try and wrap this up then. We've traced this path laid out in the source material, starting from that feeling of being caged by expectation.
Moving through the courage to look honestly at yourself, to say no, to let go of the unnecessary weight.
To speak truth even when it's hard, finding strength in solitude, embracing that quiet inner rebellion.
Yeah, and redefining huge concepts like love and success based on your own integrity and authenticity.
So the core takeaway from these sources seems to be that being a free man, in Maestro's terms, it's less about your outer world changing.
And much, much more about your inner world. It's an internal state you build through conscious choices day by day, leading to a life defined from within.
Right. So thinking about all this from the source material, what does it mean for you listening right now? If freedom isn't mainly about changing your external situation, but about this internal shift towards a life that truly fits you.
What's maybe one small internal change, one tiny shift in perspective or awareness you could make today? Just one step on that path towards living a life that feels like your own.